But welcome everyone to our second panel discussion of the day and the last panel of our conference. Caroline Anderson, founder of BloomAgainBklyn, and Carol, I'm not going to say her name right now, Teten, founder of Dancetime Publications, will be talking about how they started their nonprofits with George Manis, senior editor of AARP The Magazine. The AARP Magazine is the largest circulation magazine in the US. Prior to working to AARP, George was a senior editor at Money, senior writer at TheStreet.com, and a reporter at the Daily News. With that, I'll turn it over to George.
Am I on?
Yes.
You are.
Okay, well, thank you very much and welcome everybody. And I'm here, as Emily said, talking with two entrepreneurs. One is Caroline Anderson. I will give both of the entrepreneurs a brief introduction. Caroline Anderson is the founder of BloomAgainBklyn, which she started in 2014. What the organization does is takes flowers that would otherwise be thrown in the trash by florists, social event venues, or stores, and repurposes them, taking them to brighten up nursing homes and homeless shelters in the metro New York area. Previously, she spent about 20 years in children's book publishing, and before then, she founded one of the very first vintage photography galleries in the country. My other guest, Carol, I'm going to pronounce this correctly, I hope, Teten, is a dancer and choreographer who is passionate about social and historical dance, and she has devoted her career to preserving, choreographing, and performing social dances of Western culture. She's now one of the world's leading experts in the field, and she has founded two dance organizations, a nonprofit professional company, Dance Through Time, I'm hoping I'm getting this correctly, and a for-profit video production company, Dancetime Publications. So to start things off, I would like to ask Caroline your origin story. It sounds, when you first described it to me, to be very impulsive, but tell me what happened.
Okay. There's actually a history with it. I've always been passionate about flowers. Some people in their families cook together. We always did flowers together throughout my childhood, whether it was a happy or a sad occasion with my sisters and my father and my mother. That passion for flowers continued when I then was a stylist in London, and I used to work with photographers, and then that was a job that I worked, and then I worked at Penguin Books in London, and again worked with flowers, and then ultimately worked at Scholastic Publishing in visual content. And we worked with flowers quite a bit. The aha moment for me was when I had galleries, and I was starting a pop-up gallery show in Brooklyn with an artist who's fairly well known. His name is Ken Rush, and we needed a pop-up space, and the space that we used was Opalia Flowers in Boerum Hill. We hung 70 paintings. There were flowers that echoed the urban scapes. And at the end of the show, we said, what are we going to do with these flowers? And so the florist, who is quite well known, Opalia Flowers, Flower School, New York, said, it's a wasteful industry. We're going to have to give them away or trash them. At that aha moment, I realized that there was a need to repurpose and upcycle flowers. So that was the start. That was the seed of the organization.
So tell me what you did the next morning. Like, a lot of people have aha moments like that and then go home and sleep.
Yeah.
What did you do the next morning where you say, okay?
Okay, so what happened was I worked with another with a woman that was we had both retired. She was quite a bit younger. I left Scholastic and I was doing the pop-up artist shows, and she was with Merck. She was a financial person for Merck. And I said to Donna, you know what, there's this opportunity to get flowers from the solid waste stream to people who are at risk and in need. And so the two of us decided that we wanted to identify those organizations that might have the same mission, because flowers are really just a conversation. It's it's a starter. So the flowers are a vehicle, they're a taxi to breaking social isolation. What population is obvious that needs to break social isolation and is isolated? And that is healthcare residents in nursing homes. So the next day or so, first we needed a source because the florists are all over the city. So we realized that a retailer like Trader Joe's, when they have one bad flower among their dozens and dozens of flowers, they have to spoil them. So we asked Trader Joe's whether they would be interested in us upcycling the flowers for populations at risk.
Okay, I'm gonna interrupt you here, and
Yeah.
we'll get back to Trader Joe's. But now I'd like to ask Carol, how did you get started? I assume you were prior to founding the dance company, you were a dancer. When did you say, okay, I have to start something here?
My background was in modern dance, and I kept wondering, as a modern dancer does, where does movement come from? And so I got very interested in researching our history and found out that movement, like everything else, is a cultural heritage. And I started with the first text that we have because of when the printing press was started, and it was the 15th century. And I was going forward with theatrical dance into the 20th century until I realized there's such a thing as royalties, and that could stop me from doing anything at all. So I in the theatrical dance and social dance were one and the same up until the 18th century. So I followed it through with social dance, about which I knew nothing, and ended up discovering dances from the 15th century through the 20th, which is when I ended that company, and created a program that's called edutainment. And that means that I showed 500 years of social dance in an hour and a half with 500 costumes and 8 human beings who kept changing every 30 seconds almost. And it was taken up by Columbia artists and traveled around the country. So it became, and nobody else has ever done this. But what started it? Passion, curiosity. I wanted to see what, yeah.
So how did you go from that curiosity to, filing papers that make you a nonprofit? At what point did you say, well, I have to get myself organized?
I hired dancers, one or two of them, depending what I was working on, for little gigs. And the little gigs got to be more often. And then I had a little coterie of dancers, 4 of them. That's 2 at a time because I was doing couple dances. Yeah. And I was on the tail end of another dance organization. And the director of the opera, the Seattle Opera, said to me, Carol, you're not the type of personality to be on the tail end of another organization. You should have your own organization. And that was the shifting point, because when you want money for something, you've got to manage your own organization and not wait for somebody else to make decisions for you. So that was my first career, was that.
So tell one last question before I get back to Caroline. Why a nonprofit? I don't know if this is obvious to you, but why a nonprofit as opposed to a for-profit company?
Dance companies are generally nonprofits, because dance companies usually cannot survive without a certain percentage of donated money. As somebody said to me about the ballet in San Francisco, who's head of marketing, you could fill every seat in the house every single night and you would still have a negative balance, because there is so much dance. It uses a lot of in-person experience, obviously. And any of these arts organizations have huge office backups. So there's a reason why the arts are there as nonprofits. They need outside funding far beyond an audience that may possibly fill every seat and generally doesn't.
Oh, okay. So Caroline, I'd like to get back to Trader Joe. You picked them out. Did you pick out first the recipients or your suppliers? And how did you get the first of each to take you seriously? Just sort of walking in and saying hi?
Yeah, well, we picked up the suppliers first because without the suppliers and without the asset that we're taking out of the solid waste stream, we don't have a business. You're upcycling these assets, these beautiful flowers to start a conversation. So we started with the retailers. Trader Joe's is obvious because they're huge and they sell an enormous, they're straight to they're direct to the supply, they're direct to the supplier. There's not a middleman. And they were thrilled. So yes, I actually just walked in. I had a good amount of background because I had all of the experience at Scholastic and in my gallery and as a stylist. So they were happy to talk to us. And then we found that one led to another. That was not just that retailer, but it's thousands of flowers that they, it's actually hundreds of thousands of flowers that they have to spoil. So they were very happy to have somebody to take it. They compost them. So take it out of it and have a second life. There is nobody else that's doing this in the tri-state area. So they, the second time, then it led to florists, big florist, event planners, corporate events. All of these people use flowers for, a few hours. So first it was a source, and then it was who needs these. That's the major thing. What is this going to do? It's going to break social isolation. It's going to tell those people who are alone behind closed doors that they are not alone. It's going to start a conversation. It's a vehicle. And so the first organization that the first recipients were nursing home residents, and the way that we approached them was that we went to our model healthcare organization called Cobble Hill Healthcare, and we did a focus group with the recipients. Did they want flowers? What would that mean to them? Would it start a conversation? But we realized that, the vehicle of flowers and starting a conversation and letting people know that they're cared for does not narrow down to healthcare residents. It's many populations at risk. It says to a trauma survivor, a domestic violence survivor, there is somebody that cares. Here's a gift of beauty. They may never have gotten another gift like that to children who are at risk. So
you say you think you're the only one in this area doing it. Were there other people doing this in other parts of the country? And what were you able to learn, if anything, from the people who had gone on ahead of you?
It's a great question. We did a lot of research with, the woman that I said that I started with, who is a financial head. There's something called Random Acts of Flowers, and they were down south and Midwest. They were very generous with their information. They're a different model. I mean, they're a drop off, they're a transfer service. They would pick up flowers because they're car oriented in the Midwest. They go to a hospital, they pick up flowers, they go to a florist, they pick up the flowers and they drop them off at the hospital. We really start a conversation because we actually we're not just a drop off. What we do is we do workshops with the organization that we are serving. So we've got 350 volunteers. They range from about 30, actually 21, the oldest is 82, the sweet spot is about 35 years old. And we work in workshops with the recipients. So we'll run workshops, they'll work with our volunteers, with younger volunteers like Girl Scouts, and engage over these flowers.
They'll do like flower arranging. They'll do flower arranging sessions.
The flower arranging, but it's really a conversation. It's like working with somebody. It's focusing. So if it's a nursing home resident, for that moment they don't have a Parkinson, they are involved and engaged in a conversation. If it's a trauma survivor, we do a lot with new immigrants immigrant families. Flowers are universal. You don't have to, so that it's a team building.
I get it.
experience.
So Carol, what did you learn, or other than that first bit of advice, which sounds very useful, which is you gotta be a nonprofit. What, or early on, who did you turn to for advice, and who gave you the most helpful advice as you were getting started?
Trial and error. And I think somebody here said, what did I know? If I could tell you what I knew about nonprofits before I started one, it would add up to somewhere between 0 and 1. What I knew about dance seemed to be quite a fair amount. What I knew about 500 years of social dance was between 2 and 3. I mean, it was really, I had a passion.
Okay.
And I was going to make it happen. And I have to tell you that I mentor many people through school who want to start businesses. In the first 5 minutes, I know which ones are going to survive and which ones are going to go by the and the people with passion and get up and go, like Caroline, for example, have an energy that is going to get them through all the cement doors that we all meet. It's a personality type and knowledge. No,
Got
there
it.
wasn't one person. There wasn't one person. It was determination, blind determination.
So can you tell me, what were some of those first errors that you made? I know people like to talk about successes. I love talking about, mistakes and what you learned from them. Can you talk about, does something come to mind? Where you say,
Well,
"Oh,
let
that-
me
that
put it,
didn't work."
I will tell you about my second company, Dancetime Publications, because the first one was so long ago, its beginnings I wiped out of my poor little head. Dancetime Publications, I started after Dance Through Time, and that was for profit. And my first video I made under that house, so to speak, was a how-to video for 19th century social dance. Anyway, I looked at it after I made it. It was really terrible. I sold it. Lots of people bought it. But my second video was 500% better. And that level stayed for all my preceding videos. It's like my mistake in the first one was that I really didn't know what I was doing. I knew what I was talking about, but I didn't know how to translate it into video format that would be truly professional.
Did you get
So-
somebody else to help you with that? How did you overcome that?
Oh, I always hire professional editors. I hired a professional videographer. It's just that the level of that professional was much lesser than the videos done by better professionals after that one. I mean, there's a degree in professionalism, and I didn't know what I was doing, but I do it anyway, and it's sold. I just, put it in the back pocket.
So Caroline, what would you say, looking back, what would be the thing that you would tell other people, don't do what I did?
Mm-hmm. I mean, for us, I think it was, the good news was the bad news. And the good news was that we're a collaborative organization, we're a mission building organization, so that if we're working with an organization that houses 300 women who are trauma survivors, we're helping them augment their mission by helping build that community. But there are many communities that we don't fall into an easy niche. We don't just work with the healthcare, the older population, or the homebound population, or the at-risk children population, or the trauma survivors. So we spread ourselves quite thin, so that I think perhaps we should, we answered. It's something that we're struggling with all the time. The good news is there's a lot of need. The bad news is a lot of need. You've got to sort of pick the opportunities and be very.
Were there particular times where you just said, we'd like to help this organization, but this is just
Sure.
not working out for.
Yeah,
one
I
reason
mean,
or
we
another?
just, it's funding. So, so now I think the biggest mistake, it wasn't a mistake. I'm not sure it was a mistake. I think that, Carol, you probably agree. It's a lot of trial and error and you have to have some models. So we did a lot of things for free. I mean, we went into schools and we did, change. We were asked by the public schools to work with their curriculum on how to make change. How do you become a change agent? So we went in with buckets of flowers. The children worked in teams. They understood how they make it, how they community engagement works and how they make an impact by working together and making arrangements and then writing notes to healthcare residents and nursing home residents. And so we did that for free for many public schools, and then finally got to the point where we're at the Board of Ed and we'll be funded for that. So was it a mistake? It's a lot of energy. So I would say that you have to focus in terms of, where you want to put your efforts.
Right. So I want to, going back to Carol, I assume, and this question, I'll come back to you, Caroline, for this. When you are a nonprofit, you cannot pay a lot or you can't pay people at all. How do you motivate people, or how do you find people who are motivated?
Well, first of all, nobody says you cannot pay a lot. You pay as much as your organization will allow you to. I think the last artistic director of New York City Ballet earned $1 million a year. This is not too shabby. So, and generally speaking, correct. I didn't pay much, and I did not rely highly on volunteers. Some people rely more highly on volunteers. And how did I get people to work for me? Is I cajoled them. I used the power of my personality. I said, I've got a dream, please join the dream. And dancers love to dance. And the dancers stayed with me for a long time. And as a matter of fact, just gave a event honoring me 30 years after they had danced, 30 years later. And I said, I'm saying this to people, I said to my granddaughter, I said, the reason was because, other than I did something nice, was that I respected them and they in turn respected each other. A lot of it has to do with how you connect with the people who are part of your life.
Got it. And Caroline, how would you, I think you said you have 350 volunteers working for you right now. That's a very large organization, and you might not be able to have that same one-to-one relationship that Carol can have. How do you motivate them?
Well, I think Carol kind of hit it on the nail. I think that you use their skill sets. You find people that are passionate about what you're doing and want to give back. This is a time, I think, during the last 6 years that people want to do something kind within the community and become engaged with other people. It's been a rough time in our history. And so I think that, but in terms of 350 people total, we actually have very steady core volunteers, and we managed it because we started out trying to manage the volunteers ourselves. That was very difficult with St. Francis students and college students. But then New York Cares reached out to us and adopted us. And once they manage part of our volunteers, and then we manage the website, the other part of our volunteers. And we have a high-class problem. We're oversubscribed on volunteers. I think they're motivated because the mission is motivating, and it's making a difference. And I think that, we're lucky to be in a diverse community, both in age and in every sort of other background, racial background and cultural background. And so we've come together. We're as diverse as the populations we serve. And that's been a real kind of community engagement. So we've been very lucky. We've had the same team leaders with New York Cares for both on the corporate side and the volunteer side. for sometimes for 6 years. So we've had it's been, and the way that we have been able to engage community organizations is that we're a collaborative organization. We work with Grow NYC, we work with New York Cares. So the larger organizations have worked with us to help manage.
Okay, Carol, you said before that at SCORE, you can sort of tell within the first 5 minutes of somebody whether it's going to work or not, depending on the passion that they have. What do you tell someone who is thinking about forming a nonprofit? What do you want to tell them in the first 5 minutes?
Oh, it's a good, it depends who I'm talking with. I don't quite know how to say that. There are so many people who say they want to start nonprofits and have no idea how much work it is. And that people think that the government or somebody's going to give you a donation, you'll be rich with money and you can do all these wonderful things you want to do. That's the naive beginning. And in fact, most of the money comes from family members, friends when you're starting out. And these foundations usually wait 2 years to see how you're doing before they'll give you a penny. And there's a famous thing that I got from a foundation once that was I asked for $100,000 and they gave me $2,000 and they said, and if you don't use it, please give it back for the project. So, anyway, so I sort of wake them up to the fact that they have to build an organization, and I give them information of how you start a nonprofit. But there are some people who, with very good intentions, don't have enough understanding of how to build a business, even a nonprofit business, to get their water wings underneath them.
Got it. So Caroline, what would you add to that in terms of what you would tell somebody in the first 5 minutes?
Yeah, no, I think that's actually, she summed it up pretty well. Carol summed it up pretty well, and that, it is a constant struggle. I mean, we have 3 part-timers. We have an outreach person that we pay. We have for outreach for corporate engagement and social engagement and corporate workshops and weddings. And then we have an operations director and a workshop director. So, you have to pay people. And so it is not easy to, you have to listen to a lot of people. You have to get a lot of good advice. We did a lot of research with other leading people who have started nonprofits and had a fair amount of mentors. I think that you've got to also figure out how, for us, we were lucky because we have a way in which to actually bring in funds through corporate social responsibility workshops. Corporations will utilize us for and pay us to run workshops and community engagement and give back. And that's a constant stream of income, as are the wedding donations.
Got
because,
it.
So it's about money at the end of the day in terms of sustainability. I mean, yeah.
Okay, so I think we're nearing the end here, but I'd like to squeeze in one viewer question here. I don't know if who this might apply to, if it's either of you. Let's say you're starting this, starting up a nonprofit with somebody else, and we were talking previously about passion. What happens if one of the partners is a little more passionate about it than the other? I don't know if you've had to deal with things like that. How do you work around something like that, if you have any thoughts?
I think that if you were working with somebody else, you have to analyze what jobs have to be done and then put names by the jobs. It may be that you are in love with hanging curtains and your partner is in love with cleaning toilets. Obviously, don't take me literally, but anyway, different tasks. And it's very possible that your partner really has the talent and the ability in an area that you don't. So don't put a sticker on them that puts them in an area that they are in fact not cut out for. That's
right. Yep.
Caroline, anything to add to that?
Yeah, you have to identify their skill sets and their passion. It has to be different than yours, and you have to marry them. So for me, I first bought in a woman who was straight and narrow and a financial person, and I'm the creative end, and we worked, hand in hand, but both had the same passion. So I think that's exactly right. You can't duplicate your skill sets, and you've got to work together to build together.
Oh, okay. Well,
It's like a marriage.
I see the everybody coming back in here, so I will now thank you
Yes.
both very much. I found it very interesting, and I'll pass it along to Emily and Betty.
Yes,
Thanks,
I really hate to end the conversation. It was a great dialogue. Thank you so much, George, for moderating, and Carol and Caroline for sharing your insights about your nonprofits and how you got started. A great way to end the conference.